and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today I have another cool back-to-back classic bike comparison for you. Today it is Suzuki's 1983 GS1100E. It was the best all-around superbike that money could buy in that year. Likewise, and this is an 82 GS1100G, it was the best sport touring standard available in 1982. I know some of you might be thinking, why in the world are you comparing two bikes that are really in two different classes? And really the point is, these are both 1100cc Suzukis. They both have the same brakes, they both have a similar engine. Now the E model has a 16-valve head, it also has chain drive, whereas the G model has a 2-valve head and shaft drive. The chassis on these bikes are similar as well, and so where you might think that the GS1100E just rocks the world and dominates every performance category, it's not so much of a clear distinction as you might at first think. There is so much overlap in the way that you can ride these two machines that it's really like two mildly different flavors instead of two very sharply contrasted bikes. There's so many similarities, and so we'll go over that. They both have dual disc brakes up front. They both have single piston calipers. I have upgraded both bikes with Spiegler steel braided brake lines. They're both running similar master cylinders. Both bikes have air assist front shocks. They both have the dual shocks in the back. The GS1100E has the rebound damping and the spring preload. This has spring preload as it's set up currently. Both of these bikes, I'm running the same handlebar. They're both running the MGO Magna wide handlebar. It's the handlebar I put on a lot of my classic bikes, and it gives a very good level of control, especially on the heavier, older bikes. It's a little bit wider than standard and a little bit lower, and it really helps the handling and the transitions in the corners for both of these bikes. The GS1100E has an aluminum swing arm on it. That was an upgrade, and it also is a chain drive, and the GS1100G here has a steel tube swing arm with the shaft drive. Both bikes have big, well padded, wide, comfortable seats, and really the ergonomics on both bikes, these were each a bike that you could ride to the track, you could ride them across country, you could ride them on tight back roads, and they really excelled in all of those areas. They were really good bikes all around. All right, enough talk. What are these bikes actually like to ride? What are they like out on the road? I'm gonna gear up, I'll bring the camera along, let's find out together. Let's ride. I'm currently riding Suzuki's 1983 GS1100E. What a powerhouse. This thing really pulls strong up above 6,000 RPM and really makes significant power as low as 2,500 RPM. It has such a broad range of power, and it just keeps building. And the crazy thing is, for as fast as this bike is and for as quick as it picks up revs, it's so eminently drivable and so comfortable. And one of the things that I'm noticing right off the bat when I compare this to my GS1100G is that the gearing is quite low in comparison to the G model. And so whereas on the G I'm revving about 4,000 RPM at 70, I'm revving 4,000 RPM on this E model at 60 miles an hour. And this is kind of geared like the G is in 4th gear. So it's pretty low, and I'm sure that accounts for a lot of the bike's quickness and its sporty flavor. And this thing handles so nice. It's fairly tightly controlled. This bike does have the anti-dive front suspension, which is supposed to firm up the damping rates as you apply the brakes. I don't know that it really works all that well. Functionally, it seems to just make the brakes a little bit mushier, and it still seems to dive a little bit under braking, so go figure. We'll do a little bit of a roll-on up here from 40 to 80 and go. And it is a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. The roads are great. I like that the crops aren't too high, so I still have good line of sight. And I'm on this fabulous vintage Suzuki. Does it get any better than that? I'm currently riding Suzuki's 1982 GS1100G, and I am riding this back to back with my 1983 GS1100E. And I just got off about a 50-mile ride on the 1100E, and I'm kind of struck with a couple of things. The first thing is this bike is definitely geared taller, and so it just gives it a little bit more long-legged, relaxed feel, especially at 55 miles an hour and up. I've got less vibration through the handlebars than I had on the E, and it's just more relaxing to ride. It's not as on-off with the throttle. It doesn't seem to have quite as much pickup, and that's just a function of gearing. This motor is one of my favorites. It's a 2-valve 1100cc Suzuki motor, and it pulls from idle to redline. It's got such a nice long power brand. It just pulls all the way up through. Anywhere from 2,500 RPM up, it just pulls away smoothly out of corners. This also has a great shifting transmission that Suzuki put in their bikes, and it's just a fabulous ride. I absolutely love this bike. And go. Stop. It'll be interesting to see how that compares with the 1100E 40 to 80 roll-on. The E has the advantage in gearing. It's geared shorter, so you would expect it to pull harder in that range, and it may very well, but we'll check the times between the two. Handling on both these bikes is very secure. I feel like the G, I set a little bit more down in it instead of up on top of it, and that actually helps it to handle a little bit easier, I guess. I feel like I'm down lower, so the center of gravity of everything is just slightly lower on the G. Effortless acceleration. That was not pinned.
the suspension department, the E is a little bit more plush because it's a little bit closer to stock. I'm running progressive springs in this one, and it's certainly not punishing, but it also doesn't dive as much under braking. And I feel like this G actually has a little bit of an advantage in the braking department as well, because it's using the same pistons, but it doesn't have the anti-dive, and so it's a little bit crisper brake feel. I would have expected, transitioning from the G to the E model, that the E model would just be so much better in almost every area, in handling, in braking, in engine performance. And it does have a snappier motor above 6,000 RPM for sure. But these bikes are honestly roughly equivalent in so many areas. And because the gearing's a little bit taller on this G, it's a little bit more relaxed place to ride, and with a few tweaks to the suspension like I've done, it's very similar in a sporting environment to the E model. There's really not much of a difference as far as chassis wise and suspension wise. If I had to choose one just to look at, the 1100E is so beautiful. I love the lines of it. I think it's such a nice looking bike. And I love this G, but I don't think it has the sex appeal of the E.
All right, man, what a lot of fun. These two bikes are just tremendous examples of the UJM. They're both fantastically capable bikes, and even though the Suzuki GS1100E was really classified as a sport bike and the GS1100G was more of a touring standard, they have such a similar feel from the saddle, and they're both really capable mileage eaters, capable UJMs. To me, the biggest difference on the E, it does have a more powerful motor, really above 6,000 RPM. This thing comes on strong in a way that the GS1100G just doesn't. The GS1100G pulls strong all the way to redline, but it doesn't have a power rush at the top end, and the E model really does. The E model is also a little bit further forward with the reach to the bars, and I get a significant amount of vibration through the handlebars that I don't get as much of on the G bike. And again, this is kind of the flavor of them. This is more the touring setup. The taller gearing on the G bike means it's more relaxed to ride. The seat wise, between the two of them, they're both comfortable. They're different, but supremely comfortable, and honestly, way more comfortable than any modern bike that I have ridden, believe it or not. And these are the original seats for these two bikes. Both of the bikes are very well equipped. They both have great range. You know, another touring feature is the shaft drive on the G. That goes with a touring model. And I like the lower maintenance of the shaft personally. Looks wise, there's no comparison. To me, I love the look of the GS1100E. I think it's just gorgeous. The metal flake in the red paint is phenomenal. It's got the big 8-inch headlight. The instrumentation is a little bit nicer on the E as well, and the aluminum swing arm and the adjustable suspension in the back. It's really a competent package and really a fun bike to ride quickly. The GS1100G is right there with it though, and on real world riding, there's very little to separate these if you're not on a racetrack. They both pull from low RPM extremely well. They both pull from about 2,500 RPM very cleanly, very smoothly. With the exhaust sound, the E has the stock exhaust on it, so it's going to be much quieter. It does sound louder than the G did with the stock pipes on the G. Braking wise, the GS1100G actually has a little bit of an advantage because it doesn't have the anti-dive, which soaks up some of your brake lever travel when you apply the brakes. If I were taking these to a show and I wanted people to look at the bike and enjoy it, I would certainly take the GS1100E. It really has street cred. This G is a sleeper. Nobody really cares if I bring it. And that's a shame because it really is a nice bike. But I like driving a sleeper, and most people don't expect it to be quick or quick in a back road, and it really acquits itself quite well. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you have owned a GS1100E or a GS1100G, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.